following program is a production of the Fairfax Network, Fairfax County Public Schools.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Della Kidd. Today, we explore the power of imagination by highlighting two series of books written by Brandon Mull. Fablehaven tracks the story of siblings, Kendra and Seth, to a secret preserve of magical creatures. Beyonders, geared for a slightly older audience, follows Jason as he attempts to journey home from a dangerous world of suspicion and fear. Each book in the series exceeded all publishing expectations. There's no better place to start this exploration of fantasy fiction than meeting author Brandon Mull. Brandon, I'm so glad to have you with us today.
I'm really glad to be here.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Join us via email and phone. For now, let's get started. Brandon, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself before we start discussing all the many rewrites that you had to endure before your books landed on the New York Times bestseller list?
Yeah, sure. I am a guy from Utah. I grew up on the coasts. I grew up in Connecticut and California, but I live in Utah now with my wife and 3 kids. I have, well, actually 4 kids, 3 kids in the picture.
We're looking at 3 of them now.
My oldest is Sadie, my son Chase, my daughter Rose, and there's the baby Calvin and my wife Mary. I've got a really supportive wife. If she hadn't been supportive, this whole writing thing probably never would have happened.
Well, that's wonderful. Talk to me now. Let's move over to the rewrite a little bit. As I mentioned, there have been many of them. What is that process like?
It's really hard for a new writer to get published. You know, there's a lot of people trying to get books out there, and so you can be pretty talented and still it can be pretty grueling. Like the first book I wrote, I tried for 4 years to get it published, and it never even worked out. Fablehaven was actually the second novel I wrote. And so rejection is a big part of it if you want to get started as a professional author.
And you were talking about the importance of maintaining your vision through all of these revisions. We were talking a little bit before the show, how important it is to hold on to that main idea that you have that image.
You know, if you don't, you have lots of people telling you what you can do to fix your book, and if you don't have a pretty strong vision of what you want your story to be, you can sort of lose focus with all these different people telling you how they would like the story to evolve. So it's this mix of being willing to listen and improve it when it makes sense, but to hold true to your vision when it doesn't make sense to you.
Well, Fablehaven clearly is a huge success. It's been published in over 30 languages. I believe we have the image of the cover of the German version of the book. Yes, we're looking at it now. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the German version of Fablehaven is called Fableheim, and sometimes when they do foreign covers of the books, they use different art than we might have chosen here in America. I'm not really sure what is on the cover of Fableheim. To me, it sort of looks like Yoda's awkward brother.
Well, for those who have not read Fablehaven, can you tell our viewers the premise of the book?
Yeah, Fablehaven is the story of 2 kids. You have Kendra, who's 13, her brother Seth is 11, and they discover that their grandparents are the caretakers of a secret wildlife park for magical creatures. The adventure begins at Fablehaven, which is a wildlife park hidden in Connecticut, but as the series goes on, the characters journey farther and farther from Fablehaven to different wildlife parks for magical creatures hidden around the country and around the world, including a secret dragon sanctuary and an ancient demon prison.
Okay, you've described a lot of characters, you've described a lot of action going on. How do you approach the writing process? Do you begin, for instance, with a character sketch? Do you begin with a setting of the story?
Yeah, this varies for me depending on the story, but with Fablehaven I started with the setting. I had the idea of what if there was a secret wildlife park for magical creatures? What if that's where all the dragons and ogres and giants have been hiding out all these years? And that idea, that concept became like a playground in my head. I began asking myself what kind of creatures would live there and who'd want to help them and who'd want to harm them and who'd be interesting characters to discover them and what would be some of the dangers involved. And as I thought that through, a story began to form.
Wow. Well, we're going to break a moment from my questions because via Skype we have some students waiting to ask you questions and hear your answers. These are students from Greenbrier East Elementary School. Hi everybody, are you ready? I see our first student. This is Russell from Greenbrier East. Russell, what's your question for Brandon?
Oh, my question is, how do you plan all the action in your stories?
How do I plan the action?
How do you plan the action?
In my stories, part of it is understanding who the character is and then understanding what challenges or obstacles the character is having to face. So like say if a character's brave, he's going to tackle the obstacles or the challenges in a different way than a character who's cowardly or scared or shy. And so, or if a character's scared but then has to try to conquer it, that's an interesting story too. If the character's scared but then reluctantly has to overcome an obstacle or a challenge. The action is what happens as interesting characters meet interesting trouble. And hopefully if you stay true to who that character is and you keep the consequences of their choices realistic, that's how the action unfolds in a story.
Okay, thanks for the question, Russell. I believe we have another Skype question for you from Greenbrier East. Okay, now we have, I believe this is Anne. Hi, Anne. What's your question for Brandon?
During the event Midsummer's Eve, I wondered if you got your idea from Shakespeare. Did you read a lot of Shakespeare when you were younger?
I did read some Shakespeare, and yes, like Midsummer Night's Eve has fairies in it and a fairy queen, and that was probably part of the reason I included a fairy queen in Fablehaven was because of the fairy queen in Midsummer Night's Eve. That's pretty smart that you were able to notice that, because yeah, I think Midsummer Night's Eve was definitely an influence on the fairy culture at Fablehaven.
All right, and I believe we have one more question via Skype, and this is from Tara. Hi, Tara.
Hi.
What is your question?
Why did you choose to make your fairies selfish and vain?
Okay, yeah. At Fablehaven, I had to decide how the different magical creatures would behave. My job as a writer is to bring them to life in hopefully a new way or a slightly different way than we've seen it done before. I made my fairies kind of selfish and vain because they're so beautiful and they're cute, and I thought it just, to me, it made the story interesting versus if the fairies were just sweet and nice. Sometimes when characters have a little like spunkier personalities, it makes them more interesting. I made my centaurs jerks. I made my trolls super greedy, and I made my fairies kind of selfish and vain. Even though there's a goodness to them, they still try to help the characters, but there's a selfish vanity to them, definitely.
All right. All great questions. Thank you, students from Greenbrier East via Skype today. When writers create fantasy fiction, they infuse supernatural elements to the story to drive its plot line. When something is supernatural, the laws of nature are turned upside down. As a young writer, where do you begin this process? Well, earlier, Brandon shared a way to think out of the box with a few student assistants. Let's take a look.
My friends and I are going to show you guys how easy it can be to build a world by playing an imagination game. For my job, I build worlds in books like Fablehaven, and especially in my new series Beyonders, where the characters are going to cross into a fantasy world, kind of like a Narnia type scenario, where they leave our reality and cross into a fantasy reality. Today, these explorers and I are going to create a fantasy world. What's your name?
Isaac.
Isaac, you are going to be our leader today. What's your name?
Kaylee.
Kaylee, you are going to be our navigator. What's your name?
Gina.
Gina, you're going to be our security officer. You're going to keep everybody alive, all right? And what's your name?
Lexi.
Lexi, you're going to be our cook today, our chef, all right? Keep everybody well fed. Okay, now, to create this world, you guys are just going to make stuff up as I ask you questions. You can make this world as weird as you want. We're going to start out by crossing into a fantasy world. We got to go through something to get there. Kind of like in Narnia, they went through a wardrobe. What are we going to go through to get into this fantasy world, Isaac?
A fish, a giant fish pulled you in when you were fishing, and you went so deep in the water that you crossed through a portal into another world.
Perfect. So you're fishing, you hooked a huge fish that sucked you under the water into another world. What is the ground like in this new world?
The ground is made of crunchy taco shells.
Crunchy taco shells,
Yeah.
so it's going to be hard to be sneaky in this world. And tell me, there's weird plants growing up through the taco shells. What do these plants look like?
They're gonna be flying, well, clapping dinosaurs.
Clapping dinosaurs. You've got applauding dinosaur plants all over the place, which is very strange. And something alive is coming towards us through the dinosaurs.
A giant tomato with frog feet and a bunny tail.
Okay, giant hopping tomato with frog feet and a bunny tail. Love it. And give us, storm clouds are rolling in. What's about to rain down in this world?
Dogs and cats.
Dogs and cats, literally. So we got dogs and cats yowling as they fall through the sky.
Yeah.
And is it daytime or nighttime in this world?
In this world, it's always night, and there are 300 to 400 moons.
Okay, so 300 to 400 moons, busy sky, always night. And what does the strangest moon look like of all those moons?
Well, it has a mole,
It has a mole.
and then the eyes are made out of seashells, and then the mouth is like made by lipstick.
Okay, lipstick mouth, seashell eyes, mole on the moon. So we've got a face moon up there. And finish us off, what does it smell like in this place? Something other than taco shells.
Smells like rotten tomatoes.
Smells like rotten tomatoes. All right, so yeah, don't eat the taco shells. That's probably not a good smell. Guys, that is how easy it is to build your own world. Just because you guys provided some descriptions, some details to help that world come to life in my mind and hopefully in the minds of our viewers.
The creative juices were flowing.
Yeah,
what a great idea.
Yeah, they came up with some really funny stuff.
Terrific technique for generating ideas that are out of the box.
Yeah. It never ceases to amaze me what kids will improvise if you give them a chance.
Yeah,
you know?
that was fascinating. Well, if you're just tuning in, our guest on Meet the Author is Brandon Mull. Shortly, we turn our attention to Brandon's latest series, Beyonders. But first, a brief introduction, Hollywood style, to Jason, the story's hero. Don't go away. When we return, comments, questions, and your calls for Brandon Mull.
The most powerful weapon in Lyrian is not a sword or a bow. It's a word. Lost for ages, its 6 syllables lie scattered across the land. If the word could only be put together again, its great magic could destroy the wizard Maldor and end his reign of terror forever. Some people think that finding the word is my destiny. They think I'm the hero this world has been waiting for. Trouble is, it's not my world.
Mr. Mull, I wanted to say that the part where Jason and Rachel reached White Lake and Rachel ran across was my favorite part.
My favorite part of the book was when Rachel was in the cave and she found out that Farron was a spy for Malador. It was like so shocking to me.
I think it's cool how displacers can attach and reattach their body parts. Displacers are wizard-born. That doesn't mean they're born from wizards, that means wizards made them, who can disattach and attach their body parts. Also, they can do a pretty special thing that I probably can't tell you if you want to read the book.
Boy, I heard some great comments about Beyonders.
Yeah.
The subtitle, A World Without Heroes. There are some really dark moments in this book. There's some funny moments in this book. Briefly, what is the story about and why the emphasis on heroes as well as non-heroes?
Okay, well, in Beyonders, we're definitely dealing with heroes. I mean, one of the things fantasy fiction does well is show us heroes on quests or on adventures. And in this book, we've got an emperor who's been systematically trying to get rid of all the heroes, not by killing the heroes, but by breaking them, by kind of buying them off and turning them into sellouts, by making them look and feel like failures. He's trying to just kill the whole idea of trying to be a hero. So among the cast of characters, we've got these broken heroes, and we've got a couple kids from our world who've crossed into this fantasy world, and they're trying to learn how to be heroes. Kind of at first they're reluctant, but then they start warming up to the idea as they see the need in this world for heroes.
Who are some of your heroes?
One of my heroes is my grandpa. My grandpa was an old World War II pilot. He was one
Are we looking at him now?
Yeah, we're looking at him now. He was one of the only guys who got off the ground at Pearl Harbor on the day Pearl Harbor was bombed, and he fought all through World War II in the Pacific Theater as a fighter pilot. And so I grew up with, he was like the old guy on the recliner, watching sports and stuff, but he had these amazing stories of these things that he did that were just so larger than life and brave. So he was an example of a real life hero in my life.
It sounds like a true inspiration too.
Oh, definitely, yeah, no.
Wow.
A lot of what I understand about heroism just comes from saying, okay, some of these people they're real people, you know what I mean? And they just get set in extraordinary circumstances.
Taking time to share their stories. Well, tell me, what makes Jason a hero, and how does he cross over to the land of Lyrian?
Oh, how do we get Jason into Lyrian? Because Beyonders is sort of a Narnia type story, we have to leave our reality and cross into another world, kind of like the wardrobe in Narnia. And I was at the Hogle Zoo in Utah. I was staring at the hippo tank, and this hippo emerges out of the water and it opens its enormous mouth. And I looked down and I was like, you could fit a dude in there. And so I decided that the gateway into Lyrian would be the unusual gateway of the jaws of this hippopotamus. The character accidentally falls into the hippo tank at the zoo, and instead of getting swallowed or maimed, it turns out to be the gateway to this strange world. It was kind of a weird idea for a gateway to another world, and it almost makes it feel like maybe the book would be silly, but I don't take the book down a farcical road. The book takes itself very seriously, even though they get there in kind of a strange way.
It was very strange, but if you've ever seen a picture of a hippo like we just did, you can see how you got the inspiration.
Yeah, you can theoretically fit. You could stick a guy in there. Yeah.
Would it be fair to call Jason a reluctant hero?
Yes, you definitely could call Jason a reluctant hero. He doesn't have a reason to care about this world when he first crosses over. You know, he's supposed to kind of, by the end of the story, he's supposed to help save this world from this evil emperor, and in this world that's so desperate for heroes. But when he first arrives there, he doesn't understand that need, and he doesn't really have an attachment to that world. So it takes him some time. You know, at first all he wants to do is get home, and it takes him some time to learn from some of these broken heroes who are still trying, and to find, you know, sort of a fire or desire inside himself to make him take risks on behalf of this world.
Well, as we prepare to take more calls, I want to take a slight detour to Twain Middle School, where students isolate some key passages of Beyonders to mark a hero's journey. Okay, you ready? All right, let's take a look.
A hero's journey is never easy. There's the call to adventure, the summons. There are trials and low points. There are goals and a return to home. By reading passages of Brandon Mull's Beyonders, A World Without Heroes, students interact with a book to discover at least 6 steps along a hero's path.
I will gladly risk traveling with you. His body plummeted downward in a wild acceleration.
They'll call off the hunt.
All he has wanted was to get back home.
Over time, authors have explored the meaning of a hero. By studying myth and folklore, patterns emerge, helping readers understand the distinctive behavior of heroic characters. Today, students agree to disagree on Jason, Beyonder's central character.
After reading Beyonders and talking with a lot of the students who really enjoyed the book, they had a lot of different views about whether or not the main character Jason was really a hero.
To build background knowledge on heroes, the literacy team selected essays by Joseph Campbell for the students to read, comparing and contrasting real heroes with mythical heroes.
And so thinking about the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell and his literary works, theories about what a hero is, we decided to kind of dissect that into steps and then have the kids decide whether or not Jason met, so many benchmarks of being a hero.
The knowledge you now possess marks you for prompt execution. I believe this goes on Summon because this is where Jason basically starts his quest.
They'll call off the hunt. You won't have to face Maldor or anyone. I think this goes on the low point because Jason is trying to decide whether he should face Maldor or just give up and go home.
I think this is Return because he's kind of...
Brandon Mull's Beyonders, A World Without Heroes, is the first book of a series. According to the students, many issues remain unanswered, meaning there is plenty of room for a sequel. Today, what's known as this: a hero's journey is complicated and reflects action of mind as well as body, one step at a time.
You know what I love about this as an educator? This clip, it shows how the students really zero in on a text. They show, to really show that evidence of a hero's passage. The focus on the words here is really critical to the story, and the words are critical to Jason's journey as well because he has these missing pieces that are going to help get him home. Talk to us a little bit about that, and we also have a question on the word, if you can pronounce it for us. It's this long.
Yeah, there is a long
it's
word
a long one.
in Beyonders, and kind of the magical system in Beyonders is some of the characters or some of these wizards have learned the language of creation, the language that created that world, and so there's certain words that can be really, really powerful. It's a language called Edomic, and there's a certain word that the characters are trying to discover in the hopes that this word can unmake the Emperor Maldor. It's a word specifically programmed to destroy him, and that word is Arim Fex Endropus. That's how I would pronounce it. And it is just a big, long nonsense word to us, but in the land of Lyria, in this world, this word matters, and they're trying to collect the syllables of this word to stand up against the emperor.
And Jason, that's his whole journey, is finding these syllables to help get him home.
Book 1 is kind of, that's the quest he's on in book 1.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty cool how you made up your own words, like a lot of them in the book. So I made up my own word. Blick, tux, inava. It is a noun. The blick, tux, inava is a fruit that comes to life and feeds on the monkeys. Poor monkeys. Thank you for listening.
The word I created was gluckelty. Gluctly. It's a noun, and basically what it is, it's a werewolf and a displacer mixed together. And it comes out at night, and it just like hates humans but absolutely loves fairies.
The word I created is siffle. S-I-P-H-L-E. It's the 17th digit in a number longer than 20 digits long. And a lot of people confuse it and they think it's an adjective because it can be used to describe something really long.
My word is Goolade. G-O-O-O-L-A-D-E. It's when you're good at doing something, but you're just too lazy to do it, or you just don't enjoy doing it. I'm Goolade at playing the piano.
We have students calling in via Skype from Twain Middle School. Let's take a listen to what they have to say. Hi, what is your question for Brandon?
Well, hello. My name is William. I'm from Mark Twain Middle School, and I was wondering, how come Farron was in a bag and not buried with the rest of his body? Really?
Okay, good. Yeah, good question. Because displacers are characters in Beyonders. They're a magical race where they can detach body parts at will without slopping out without the blood spilling. Basically, like they can just take off their hand, take off their head. And Farron, when he meets Jason meets him at a crossroad where Farron has apparently been mugged. And I guess these muggers just out of meanness, they stuck his head in a bag at the crossroads and buried his body nearby. And Jason has to help put him back together. So. I mean, I guess if you want a reason for that, it's just that's how the muggers were kind of discriminating against displacers. Displacers aren't really liked in that region of this world, and so they had treated him cruelly by putting his head in the bag.
Thanks for the question, William. I believe we have another student waiting at Twain with a question for you. Hi.
I was wondering, my name is Chance, and I was wondering if you had a favorite author. And why is he or she your favorite author?
That's a great question. I love to read. That's why I'm a writer, is because I love stories. And probably one of my favorite authors is Orson Scott Card. He wrote a book called Ender's Game, which was one of my favorite books when I was in high school. And partly why he's one of my favorite authors too is he was really kind to me early in my career. He gave me my first good endorsement and quote. And for me, I was just like geekily happy because this was this book and this author that I'd admired, and then he gave me some help with when Fablehaven came out with helping people know that it was a decent read.
That's a great question, Chance. And I believe we have one more student from Twain waiting to ask you a question. What is your question?
Hi, I'm Katie. Mr. Mull, my question is, are there any real-life events or people that inspired you to write characters or plot points of the book?
Sure, yeah. As an author, we're always looking for details. It's the details and descriptions that kind of bring the story to life and bring the characters to life and their situations and their dangers. The character Seth in Fablehaven is sort of like my brother Bryson. My brother Bryson was a recklessly curious kid. And Seth gets himself into, and gets all the characters in the book into some trouble through his reckless curiosity. My brother used to have like a survival kit full of little kid adventure tools, like a magnifying glass and caps for his cap gun, and he'd put it in like a granola bar box and wear it on his belt. And Seth also has a survival kit. So I'll choose certain details from people I know, even though the character Seth is not exactly like my brother Bryson.
Twain Middle School, thank you so much for Skyping in such great questions. They had some really thoughtful questions for you.
Yeah, terrific.
I'm curious, tell me about, this might be hard to answer, favorite character from Beyonders, and what would that character sound like?
Yeah. Well, there's a variety of characters in Beyonders, and for me, one of the fun things was inventing the magical races in Beyonders. There's a variety of different magical races, including these seed men, the Amarkabal. They have seeds at the base of their skull, and if they get killed, the seed pops out, and if you plant the seed, they can regrow into their young adult form and live again. And so, I mean, part of the fun for me in the fantasy is building these different races and trying to make them feel real and relatable. But probably my single favorite character is the Blind King. The Blind King used to be the greatest swordsman in all of Lyrian until the Emperor took his sight. And he's kind of like, I wrote him as best I could write my ideal hero. He's very true to his values and very true to what he's trying to accomplish, and he's who kind of helps inspire Jason and Rachel to take an interest in Lyrian. He didn't become a fallen hero through any fault of his own. He used to be the greatest swordsman in Lyrian, but the Emperor blinded him, took his sight, and so he kind of lost that talent. And so the Blind King, through the course of the series, is trying to figure out how he can still contribute even though he's lost his sight.
What is your favorite made-up word, and what does it mean? That's tough because you've got a lot of favorite made-up words too.
I make up words all the time. I mean, because I'm writing fantasy, sometimes I have to name a race or name a people. In Beyonders, my favorite name is the Amar Cabal, is the name of these seed people, and it's just got a cool ring to me. It almost sounds official, like it's real, even though it's made up. Or of any made-up word, I mean, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is a classic, and maybe partly an inspiration for Arimfex endopus, kind of a big long nonsense word.
The original famous word.
The original long nonsense word, yes.
Earlier, we saw students participating with you in an imagination game.
Yeah.
What is the importance of creating?
Oh, I mean, I think creating is so huge. Think of what a terrible world we'd live in without creativity. I mean, we'd be primitives, we'd be living in caves. But thankfully, people have used their imagination to make our world a cooler place. I mean, with architecture, they give us cool buildings, or with paint, they give us art, or with stone, they build monuments and sculptures, or with science, they give us space travel. There's so many different ways to create. That's what I love. I mean, I create with words, I create stories and try to take people on adventures, but other people, create with. When I speak with students, when I speak with people, I always try to say, keep your creative hobbies alive, because at the worst, a creative hobby brings you joy in your life, and at best, it might turn into your job. For me, I always love to write, and I turn that hobby into something where I can make a living, so that my job is something that I sincerely enjoy doing.
We understand you have a creative hobby. Can you tell us briefly about it?
Oh, like doing comedy and stuff? I used to run a comedy troupe when I was in college, and that actually gave me great writing practice because it was sketch comedy. We'd write skits kind of like Saturday Night Live. So that gave me a chance to perform and to put my material, to put things I wrote in front of an audience. It helped me gain confidence as a writer to see that I could entertain people.
Sounds like so much fun too.
Oh,
you were
it's so
talking
great.
about having fun and enjoying the ride? Yep.
Yeah, like if you want to become a good writer, one of the biggest things you can do is just look for opportunities to write. And this sketch comedy gave me this opportunity to write, where it helped me get good at dialogue. It helped me get good at writing conversations.
Well, and that leads me to my last question, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
What are your pieces of advice for folks out there, for writers of fantasy?
Okay, yeah, so if you want to get good at writing, I mean, the guts of it, the key to it is, you got to exercise your imagination by creating stories. The more you practice telling stories or writing them down, the better you will get. Also, almost every good writer is a big reader. As you read a lot, and as you pay attention to how your favorite writers build their scenes, that'll help you discover how to build your own scenes. And as you read good books and then practice writing good scenes, smart scenes, you'll watch yourself improve. And then once you've written something you're proud of, share it with people you trust, maybe friends or family or teachers. As you get reactions from others, that'll help you find weaknesses in your writings or things you can improve. I mean, when I turn in a manuscript to my editor, it comes back marked up all over the place, just like a little kid who's done their homework. And my editor's job is to get rid of those mistakes, or to find places to tighten and improve the story, so that when it gets in front of readers, it'll be the best it can be. And so sometimes kids forget that getting that feedback is part of just making it good, and it's something that professional authors do just like students.
And sometimes that's a very hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, right.
We want it sometimes to,
even the
we like it. We want it to be accepted just the way it is.
Even professional writers don't love rewriting their stuff. You know what I mean? But I do love trying to make it cool and trying to make it good. Like I love that the product gets better.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. It has been so much fun listening to you talk about fantasy fiction and how we can be better writers at it and enjoying the reads.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun. If you would like to learn more about Brandon Mull, read his books and visit his website at brandonmull.com. For the Fairfax Network, I'm Della Kidd. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep dreaming. I loved the imagination section, and what I would like to know